gentlemen, welcome to Retro Warriors episode 319. Woo. As always, I'm your host, Justin Baker, and as always, I'm joined by resident old bastard, Chris Saturn.
Hello.
Saturn, we have housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
And it is that our streams are gonna happen.
Ish.
I don't know when. So my daughter started kindergarten this week, so I started my work from home job this week, so I'm trying to get in some during the work day streams. I tested it on our internet today to make sure my wife could maintain her VPN connection to work, and I could also
seem to work.
Stream at the same time. Excuse me. And yeah, it did seem to function. So as
I was able to watch you play some game.
Yes. By the time this episode is live on the main feed, we probably will have worked out a steady schedule, so you can check our Twitch page for whatever that may be. At the time of this recording, I haven't quite decided exactly how I want to schedule it. I'm leaning towards like Tuesdays, Thursdays, around like 10 a.m. kind of thing.
Yeah.
But to know what it is definitively, just go check our Twitch page. Also, if you just subscribe to us, not subscribe, turn on notifications on Twitch, it tells you when we go live, and we don't do a shitload of streams, so it's not, because I know a lot of channels you like hit the notification thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, I'm getting a million notifications because these people are always streaming. We don't stream that much, so it probably will not inundate you with notifications.
Yeah.
My week was weird.
Well, you don't say. Moments after saying that your kid started school and you're starting a new job.
My kid started school.
Was weird.
I'm working at my new job. It's and granted, it's not like a full-time office job. It's part-time as I have time and see fit kind of labor.
Kind of a quasi-contract freelance job?
It is exactly a freelance contract job, yes. I have a 1-year freelance contract.
Nice.
But it's a lot of, low minimum expectations, but high hopes kind of job where they're like, this is everything we require of you, but if you want to do more, please.
Nice.
Which is, it's a good place to be, so I can put in as much time as I want.
Yeah.
But I did, I got all excited because those new Final Fantasy games came out.
Yes.
And then I was going to buy them, but then I was like, they don't have fast forward and cheats.
Yeah, they do.
So do they have fast forward?
Yeah, you can fast forward in battle.
But you
can run outside of. Yes, but you can choose what the auto battle is.
I've been playing the game at 3 times speed. Is it 3 times speed level speed? Also, I've been grinding at 10x. Yeah. Which is also very helpful. Well, anyway, I was going to buy it, and then I ended up not because, not even because of that. It was because people started reporting really bad screen tearing. And I am extremely sensitive to screen tearing. I cannot stand even the slightest amount of screen tearing in anything. I don't know why it bothers me so much. And what I've learned is that most people, they don't fucking care. It doesn't bother them at all.
True.
Because I read a review. I don't remember who published it, but I was reading a review of the Pixel Remasters, and they were like, they're fantastic. They run great, except for huge amounts of screen tearing. And I was like, so they don't run great. They run like fucking dog shit. And I went to talk about it in the Discord, and everyone was like, yeah, screen tearing doesn't bother me, like, at all. Yeah. And I was like, what? Huh?
Well, I haven't encountered it all because I run the game windowed.
In a tiny little baby window.
Well, it's not a baby window. It's a 1440p window.
Still, it's in a window.
Yeah, it's in a window. But most of the time, I'm playing it on my TV where Steam Link cuts everything around the window. Right. So I still only see the game.
Right.
I don't even see the window border when I play it on my TV. But I get no screen tearing because of the Steam Link just streaming a windowed game.
But so I ended up playing the GBA version, and I went for an all monk run, and I got how far did I get? I think I got right up to the Earth Crystal.
Nice.
And then just kind of got bored that every battle was just me mashing the attack button.
That is what a monk run is.
And in my head, I was like, it'll be fun. I'll just run through it real quick. Then I was like, even running through it real quick is still several hours of the exact same battle over and over and over and over again.
Sometimes you have to heal.
But yeah, sometimes you have to stop. Well, you know what it was is that's what finally kind of stopped me on it. I think I hit around level like 30 on my monks. And I reached a point where high potions, it took 2 or 3 to heal them an adequate amount. and it became frustrating to have to do 2 or 3 potions to heal them.
Yeah.
Because I don't mind doing the potions, but when it's in combat and you're like, oh, I need to heal a bunch. I took a bunch of damage, and you don't really have that option.
Right.
And then that's only going to get worse because as far as I know, high potion is the highest potion. Hence its name being high potion.
Also, the original game doesn't have high potion. That was introduced in the WonderSwan version.
And I realized how frustrating the end game is going to be when I'm having to high potion over and over and over and over again.
Well, no, by that point, you'll have a healing cane and you'll have a healing helm, and you can just use those in battle to heal everybody.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. But there's still going to be that gap between where I am now and where I get those.
Yeah, you've got a couple dungeons before you get those.
So, I don't know. I might go back to it, I might not. I had fun playing what I played. I had a good time.
Yeah, but once you get those items that cast spells, then your monks can just become little battle mages.
This is true. Or I could just go back and start over as all black mages. Although I still wouldn't really have healing. One. Maybe I'll do all red mages and just be not good at anything.
Yeah, all red mage is a pretty easy run. All white mage is really tough, but it's possible.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's the only one that's the most difficult one that I managed to finish on the original hardware was all white mages.
And then I was tempted by Final Fantasy 3, and I was kind of going to get it, and then you're like, it's really different from the DS one, and then that kind of made me think that I'm not sure. I'm just going to wait. I think I'm just going to wait.
So it's not really different. So I might as well go into it, because that's what I played.
Yeah, that's what you've been playing, yeah.
I did finish 1 through 3, which is the first 3 they've released. They're all good. I recommend all of them personally. They are all based on... so the first 2 are based on the WonderSwan ports of Final Fantasy 1 and 2, which are not completely true to the original, but they are more true to the original than, say, the Game Boy Advance or PSP versions. Yeah. So you still have the traditional magic system that the NES games used, so you don't have group MP that every spell uses. You have level-based MP. However, it accumulates much faster than in the original because it's based on the scaling of the WonderSwan version. And I think they accelerated the scaling on top of that. So you gain levels really fast and you get powerful really, really fast. Yeah. I already had level 7 magic by the time that I reached the Earth Cave, which that's like in-game spell capabilities when you're maybe a third of the way through the game. So that's pretty impressive scaling there in the player's favor, not in the game's favor. But they're all done really well. Obviously, it doesn't have the bonus dungeons or bonus content that was added to the GBA games, which is a little sad. But looking back on it, that stuff definitely is just extra content tacked onto a complete game.
It was never stellar in the first place. It was cool to have, but it wasn't. Like I wouldn't say they were as like definitive as something like the color-based dungeons in Link's Awakening DX. You know, as just an example of another game that added extra stuff.
Exactly. Final Fantasy 3, I would say, is the standout here. It is excellent. It does have a mostly new translation. They borrowed a ton from the DS version.
And this is the first actual release of the Famicom version of Final Fantasy 3 in the US, correct?
This is the first time that the original 2D FF3 has left Japan at all. So that's exciting that it finally got a release internationally and in multiple languages all at once. That's very nice. Yeah. And it plays great. It does have some scaling to make it easier, but nowhere near as much as 1 and 2 do, because again, I think they just applied extra scaling on top of the already scaled versions on WonderSwan. Yeah. So this one feels a little more natural as far as the progression curve goes. It's still easier than the NES game, but not as easy as 1 and 2 are. But it does still have everything that the NES game had, so you still have all your different job changes, and it's great. It's just such a charming game. I absolutely love it. It's done very, very well. For people who have only played the DS game or other versions of the 3D remake, it is a little different. You don't have any predefined characters, so you're going to name everybody, and they all look identical. You get all your characters right from the beginning. You don't have to go find them in the first hour of the game. And there's a little bit less plot than there is on the DS. Also, of course, some of the dungeons and everything are laid out a little differently because it's 2D versus 3D.
Would you say it is more or less plot than Final Fantasy V?
Much less plot than Final Fantasy V.
That's saying something, because 5 is... 5's pretty light. I guess there's the midway point where there's a good chunk.
Yeah.
But a huge amount of 5 is just like, I don't know, we're getting a crystal or something. It's over there in the place. Spy.
Yeah, but at least in 5, all of your characters have backstories.
True.
Whereas in 3,
as thin
it's just
and flimsy as they are.
Right. Whereas in 3, it's just like, we're 4 orphans that live in this town, and now we dress in onion armor for some reason. Yeah. Oh, look, we found a crystal.
You know, after I remember after going back and forth on Final Fantasy 3, I was gonna buy it, but it went off of launch sale, so then it was $18, and I was like, and then I just didn't.
But it is good. If anybody is on the fence about it, I'm really enjoying it. It's been great. Yeah. Well, I finished it now, but it was great.
You're after the fact, you're still basking in its glow.
Exactly. And now I'm angry that 4 isn't out yet because I really want to start that. Now,
would you say Final Fantasy 2 is this version? I mean, obviously, this is kind of the definitive version of the game so far as I can tell.
Well, it's again, it's missing that content from the GBA.
Right. But it sounds like they fixed some of kind of the progression-based issues of 2.
One thing I noticed
system-based progression, not story-based, obviously.
Right. Yeah, one thing I noticed with this version is it just hands out stat upgrades like they're candy.
Yeah.
Whereas in the original, sometimes you would have to sit there and just bash yourself for 2 hours just to get...
I bash myself every day.
Damn right. But you would have to beat up your own party for a while in order to get any kind of HP increases. And in this one, you could do 5 battles without taking any damage at all and probably get an HP up in 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you're constantly like, I tried grinding in the beginning a little bit just because that's what I'm used to doing in Final Fantasy 2,
right?
And got pretty powerful pretty quick, and then I just kept going through the game, waiting until the next time I would need to grind, and it never happened. I was overpowered the entire game.
So it kind of sounds like they maybe didn't necessarily fix any of the systems in it, but tilted them enough in the player's favor that it's easy to overlook its shortcomings.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
Yep.
Now, with 1 and 2, because they're based on the WonderSwan versions and not on the originals, it does have extra stuff that wasn't in the original. Like you mentioned earlier, high potions are here now, and they weren't originally. Ethers, elixirs, stuff like that weren't in the original games are available now, which also skews the balance in the player's favor by quite a bit.
Let's do some news.
Okay.
First up, Sega is adding a bunch of classic Sega characters to the new Super Monkey Ball just to force me to purchase it.
Those jerks.
I cannot believe it. So they've added Kiryu from Yakuza. They've added Sonic the Hedgehog.
And Tails.
Tails. I had this pre-ordered, and then I canceled it, and I think I'm going to uncancel my pre-order because it just looks too cute.
They're so adorable. I hear there's a little Majima too, and that's too much for me to resist.
And Television Amico delayed again. I know.
What?
I gotta tell you, I'm just shocked that they would delay these 2 iPods connected to an Android system. I can't even.
Yeah.
Tommy Tallarico, why? It's
why would you do this to us?
Don't even care. Oh man,
how will I get the new Frogger?
I do wish the Intellivision Amico success. But man, it just seems like a piece of shit.
It does look like the console equivalent of vaporware, and it just.
I hate to be that guy because I know there are people out there that are like, this looks fun, this looks exciting, I'm excited for it. I wish it luck. But man, it just looks like trash.
Yeah, it kind of looks like trash.
You don't want to say it, but man, Tommy Tallarico, what are you doing, bud? What's going on? SteamDB shows possible release dates of Final Fantasy 4 through 6 pixel remasters, although it looks like those leaks were incorrect.
Yeah. So it looks like those were probably just placeholder dates that either Valve or Square Enix dropped on those games when they populated them in Steam, because the date that it pointed to for Final Fantasy 4 has come and gone, and nothing happened. However, before that date, the listing on Steam said coming 2021, and after that date passed, the page updated to say coming soon. So
I think every game just needs to do what the Dwarf Fortress Steam page says, and just says release date. Time is relative.
Yeah, I'm guessing that when that date passed and the game wasn't ready to be pushed to Steam, that the internal Steam system was like, shit, what do I put as a date? Just say soon.
Yeah. Epic doesn't expect the Epic Games Store to be profitable until 2027. I have a prediction, and it's that if this lawsuit continues, it's not going to be profitable ever.
Lawsuits.
Although, man, I tell you, as much as Tim Sweeney was right, but still kind of looked like an ass.
Yeah.
The more shit comes out about what Google was planning to do.
Yeah.
To damage Epic Games, the more it really looks like, maybe Tim Sweeney wasn't very well spoken and kind of seemed a little petulant, but rightfully so.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting getting to see the inside baseball of some of this.
Right.
Nintendo discontinuing Dr. Mario World will be unplayable after November 1st. Now, this is a mobile exclusive piece of shit that Nintendo made. Correct. Like so many mobile exclusive pieces of shit that Nintendo made.
Yeah.
So I don't imagine a lot of people are heartbroken over this, but it's still upsetting that it's going to be completely unplayable. Like they couldn't even maintain some sort of offline version, or at least for people that spent money in the game.
Exactly.
It's just anything. I have heard tell that is one of their more predatory endeavors by quite a margin.
Yeah. It's just so frustrating that these games are coming and going so quickly. Like when you or I look back at our youths and we think about like the original Dr. Mario, for example, I'm always going to be able to play that. It's easily emulated. It's on 1,000 platforms. You can still find cartridges. It's everywhere. But something like this that was reliant on an online server for everything and was just laden with microtransactions.
Right.
If some kid was given an iPad or something by their parents and just fell in love with this game, if this was their favorite game from their childhood, it's going to be gone soon. And the odds of them going back to it are pretty much nothing very soon. And that's depressing to me.
I do see a lot of people in the game preservation space make comments like, well, who cares? It's a piece of shit, predatory mobile trash game.
Right.
And they're
but
right.
Someone might care.
But it doesn't mean that it has no meaningful place in history.
Exactly.
Which is frustrating.
Yeah.
Fans mod the PC port of Crazy Taxi to restore cut content and add proper analog controls.
And also all of the advertisements.
Finally, someone doing Sega's work for them on these shitty Dreamcast games that they ported to Steam shittily because my Sonic Adventure 2 will not run. I just want to play my Chow Garden on my PC, and I can't.
Yeah.
Retro Games, fantastic game name for a company. The makers of the C64 Mini have announced the A500 Mini, an Amiga micro console.
I'm actually kind of excited about this.
I kind of want one, yeah. What's the price on it? It's like $179?
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's not cheap.
No, but
the Amiga's just weird and goofy enough that I kind of want it. I kind of want to get one.
It's one of those things that had so little footprint here in the US that even though I heard about it a lot, I never got a chance to really sit down with one back in the day, and I always kind of wanted to.
Same.
And I'm kind of looking at this as a possible chance to do so.
I think Amiga was a little bit later. So it's a little more palatable to me compared to something like the ZX Spectrum or the C64, where it's kind of like, not only do I have no nostalgia for it, but it's also so dated that you kind of have to have some kind of connection to enjoy it. Amiga was just later enough that I can kind of get into some of the stuff when I do dabble with it. So I'm hoping that it's enjoyable.
I feel hurt that you would say that about the C64, by the way.
Well, I have no nostalgia for it, and it's like playing old garbage.
There's plenty of quality ports of games that were also on the NES that are on the C64, and some of them are comparable.
Okay. First of all, let me remind you that your defense is some of them are comparable.
Yeah.
What a glowing endorsement.
I know.
Listen, some of them aren't shit. I promise you.
That's pretty much as far as I can say.
I played a lot of DOS games growing up. That's basically a good defense of any home computer system, which is, look, some of it doesn't suck.
A lot of it sucked on DOS.
Yeah, I play a lot of DOS. I keep trying to find like that hidden gem in the rough that we can cover and do a show over this old weird DOS game. If anyone has good old weird DOS games that I've not heard of, please write in, because I'm trying to find one. I find them and I'm like, it's okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Square Enix, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Square Enix issued a Dragon Quest survey for Western players, hinting at possible new releases or merch. I wrote in and all I said was, please never release the other Rocket Slime games, no matter what you do. That's all I asked for. What'd you ask for in the survey? Oh, I also said, no more Dragon Quest monsters. What a waste of time. I said that too.
I basically said, let's get a new Dragon Quest Monsters, let's get a new Rocket Slime, and more localizations. That's all I'm asking for. And
well, good. My vote canceled out your vote then.
Also a Builders 3. I also asked for that.
I actually forgot to do the survey. I need to go. Do it.
It's good through the end of August, which will have expired by the time the people listen to this on the regular feed. But for anybody who is listening to this on the uncut, then you should go take it if you haven't yet.
Unity acquires Parsec for $320 million.
That's a lot of money.
Which I guess good. I don't know. I like Parsec. I use it almost daily.
Right.
It has become my go-to in-home remote desktop software because it overrides all administrative blocks on your remote computers, which is a problem I run into on like Steam and even Windows Remote Desktop.
Right.
It has some safeguards in place so that you don't just have complete control over a system that you're remoted into, but not Parsec. And it's kind of fascinating to me that people aren't more up in arms about like this remote software that has no safeguards, but it makes it really convenient for people like me.
Well, remote desktop can give you full administrative control. You just have to log in using a profile that has admin rights on the destination system.
Yeah. Blizzard confirms that they're removing LAN play from the Diablo 2 remaster because
nobody uses that, right?
You know, what's a better sign for a remaster than removing features?
Right.
At this point, I think it's technically a demaster since they're removing things. So just call it what it is, Blizzard.
Just like the Warcraft 3 demaster.
There you go. More rumors point to a GTA 3 Vice City San Andreas 3-pack for Switch and new consoles, possibly remastered in some way.
Yeah.
We don't really know yet.
I saw a few news articles that were just posting pictures of it, and they were like, GTA 3-pack practically confirmed. And then when you click on the article and you read through it, at the bottom it's like, and as you see in the above fan recreation pictures...
I love when you read, in air quotes, gaming news, and you click on an article, and it starts with Reddit user blank has found, and you're like, why, dude, don't.
It's getting so bad to the point where, like, most of the articles I see are like that. And when it's not a news article like that, I'll see a headline that's like, check out this Reddit user's new cosplay. And it makes me wonder if they've stopped having any sources other than Reddit anymore.
It's tough. There are honestly, I've quit Reddit. I've had to go cold turkey. I've not installed it on my new phone. I don't go to the website. Every now and then I'll need to look up a specific thing on Reddit for whatever reason, and I'll go find that, and then I'm done with it. So I've gone back to reading gaming news websites via an RSS feed reader.
And they're all just directing you to Reddit articles.
A lot of them are. And so I've really started curating my outlets.
Yeah.
It's difficult. So other ones that I previously respected, like actually being aware of everything on their feed, I'm like, I don't know that I want to read your outlet anymore.
Yeah.
I will say Rock, Paper, Shotgun is probably my favorite, like still active that I read, and I actually... And it was because they published an article about how much hedgehogs weigh.
I saw that.
They were talking about Sonic colors and talking about how weighty Sonic feels. And then the article in the middle of it just devolved into actual statistics about hedgehogs and pictures of hedgehogs and how much hedgehogs normally weigh.
I gotta say, any news article that just devolves into pictures of hedgehogs is probably going to be a good one.
And I was like, you know what? Everyone else is just putting out crap, and you're over here writing actual journalistic articles. I appreciate this.
About hedgehogs.
Castlevania Bloodlines beta was previewed by magazines before has been leaked to the internet.
It was previewed by the magazines before the game's release.
Before release, yes.
Yes. And this was a big one that people talked about for many years because a lot of the preview articles about the game showed off this level with a blimp either in the background or you were on a blimp, one or the other. And everybody was like, well, where the fuck is this coming
Where's the
from?
blimp? Yeah.
Right. And people had dissected the ROM and found like parts that could be remnants of this early build that was previewed, but nobody could find this level. And now suddenly this beta just popped up on the internet and it has this level intact in it. So it's really exciting to be able to finally play this version that was previewed. It's not as good as the final version. Just going to throw that out there.
Well, I mean, it's a beta, you know.
Right.
Obviously,
Play
it was probably really removed for a reason, you know.
Yes.
And it wasn't because they were worried about sensitivity over the Hindenburg incident. So, you know.
Still a little worried. It was fresh. Still the same century.
I don't know about blimps. I just don't know about this right now. Previously canceled mobile Castlevania game Grimoire of Souls has been re-released as an Apple Arcade exclusive.
Yeah, I'm not happy about this.
Because you don't have an Apple Arcade?
Well, no, I could get that. No, my problem is that people who previously had put money into the game on either iOS or Android, fuck them. They lost the game. They can't play it anymore. But now, if you subscribe to Apple Arcade, suddenly you can play it, and it's no longer a pay-to-win game. So you just get everything.
Oh.
And that seems kind of shady to all the people who did pour money into it during its initial quasi-soft release.
Well, but Saturn, according to the terms of service, any microtransactions or software you purchase are the sole owners of the original corporation henceforth. So fuck you.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating to see shit like this. But, you know, at least the game is available again.
True.
I've not heard amazing things about it, but we're between that and Fantasian, and I want to say one other thing. I'm almost getting close to the point to where I'm willing to accept the 3-month free trial of Apple Arcade.
I think Mini Motorways was Apple Arcade exclusive for a bit, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And on mobile, it still is.
Yeah. Let's get into the topic at hand.
Yeah.
This week we're talking generational overlap games.
Yes.
Which is when you're out looking for a game for your brand new system, then you can just get the game you already own on your old shitty system, sometimes with new features.
Only
sometimes they're worse.
That is true.
As far as scope, there are far too many examples of generational overlap games for us to list them all.
Right.
We won't be digging into reprints or reissues because that just is way too broad. Games that are remade for a new generation, like Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, are kind of a different topic. We're talking more direct ports, and I know that's kind of a fuzzy gray area because some things you could kind of argue back and forth how much of a port they are or aren't.
True. Yeah.
But yeah, we're still drawing that line in the sand. And classic compilations are also kind of examples of these, but again, they're kind of their own separate topic.
Yes.
So let's talk initial thoughts, kind of how we ended up with this topic. I'll go first. You said it, and I said, huh? And then you said, like, Street Fighter Alpha 2, and I went, okay. And that's
sweet.
About as much as I thought about this one.
Now, I keep seeing these headlines over the last year or so about how so many of the games for PlayStation 5 and the new Xbox Series X and S are also coming to the previous generation of consoles. And a lot of these headlines and news articles that talk about it act as if that's some new, novel, original thing that's never happened before.
They do it every generation.
I know they do. But it's just kind of weird to me to see so many news organizations that supposedly cover video games acting as if it is a brand new idea to them to think that a game that is on the new system would also be on the old system. And then on top of that, we just happen to have a conversation in the Discord about a couple of games that did kind of straddle the gap in a couple of generations.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we could look at that. It
is interesting because all the examples you brought up, I remember I wasn't like current on video game consoles until like the Wii.
Yeah.
Before that, like,
it's not that long ago.
It was not that long ago. No. I mean, obviously I had systems leading up to that, but it was like, oh, it's been out for a year or two, you know, and it was kind of packed. Because what you notice a lot of the time with these generational overlap games is a lot of it is just filling the gap.
Yeah.
Filling that launch window of like, hey, the first year, what do we have? Well, not a lot, because not a lot of devs have signed up for develop for the new system because it's not sold yet and it won't sell until there's games, but they're willing to port whatever game that they already have to it.
Right.
And so I was never really kind of stuck in that weird limbo where I was like, all right, I got my new system, but there's not much for it, so I guess I'll buy an updated version of a game that I already had access to.
And sometimes you see the opposite, where companies pour a bunch of money into a game for a brand new system, and then they look at the initial sales base of that console at launch, and they're like, oh shit, not enough people own this system for us to make that money back. So can we downport this real quick? And they just kind of cheese out a shittier copy for the previous consoles.
Yeah, they just cheese it out.
They cheese it right out.
Cheese it
right in front of the whole world.
The grossest sounding way I've heard anyone refer to game development. Yeah, we're just going to cheese it out there right into the market. Cheese it all over these gamers. Here's your game, kids.
It just makes me think of like those shitty old gangster cartoons from my parents' childhood where they'd be like, cheese it, it's the fuzz.
Yeah. Let's talk why this happens, and we already kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, and again, this is pure speculation because neither of us work in the industry.
Well, I mean, speak for yourself, and
neither of us work in the industry. And while we may have had some acquaintances that have either worked in or around the industry, we're not going to pretend to know the reason for everything. This is pure speculation. But here's some reasons why we do see this so often. At least some ideas that I came up with, and feel free to correct me here. So first we got tech demos or programming tutorials. When you got a team that was just given a brand new dev kit for the Mystery Box 5000, and they've never touched it before, and they don't know what the fuck a core processor is, or a cell engine, or an emotion engine, and what is this?
The Mystery Box 5000 sounds like the shitty sequel to the Phantom game console. You remember the Phantom?
Yes.
Okay, kids, after the Phantom, we got the Mystery Box 5000.
But so they get this new machine, and they're like, well, how the fuck do we do anything with it? I just take that game we just finished and see if we can make it work on there.
Yeah, it's easier to work with content that you already have worked out, and the only thing different is the platform,
the architecture,
for sure.
Yeah. So in addition to this, you've got games that released way too late in the previous console's life that didn't get enough attention or didn't get enough sales to make back their budget, and they try to just sneak it onto that new platform in order to recoup some of the costs that they wasted developing this game for what is possibly a dead system now.
Right, because at this point they have owners of the new hardware held hostage. Because what else are you going to buy?
Right. And you're going to take Pilot Wings 64 and you're going to like it.
I bought Pilot Wings on 3DS.
Oh, you were the one.
When that I bought like the 3DS. I bought the whole 3DS launch lineup, Saturn. I had fucking Ridge Racer. I had Ghost Recon. I had fucking Pilot Wings. I bought all that shit, all of it. I played the AR game where you took your picture and then you had to like use motion to shoot with
that
the
came with
things.
the system, though.
I know, but still, I played it. I played with the AR cards. I was way into that shit. I was like, it's the future of gaming.
Right. It wasn't. Just spoiler, it wasn't.
With things are still in 3D. Real life is 3D. So caught on somewhere. You know, fuck you.
You can say that because you have two eyes, but take away one of those eyes.
I guess to be fair, Nintendo, even halfway through the 3DS, we were like, I don't know, the 2DS, who cares?
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit.
And then a lot of the bigger games, if you look at the box, it's like displays only in 2D.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Whatever.
And then, of course, you have the opposite of that. You have the games where they try to release a game right at the launch window, and there's just not the audience, like I mentioned earlier. So they have to downport it to something else. So you get that little straddle there, right as the new consoles come out. Then you have just cash grabs, where there is a game that released several years ago, but was really popular and is somehow still at least a little popular.
Saturn, how dare you speak ill of Resident Evil 4? I'm offended that you would say these things.
That might be one.
About Resident Evil 4. I can't believe you.
Now, hold on. That's not just a re-release. It's the HD Wii edition.
You can use motion controls. Why? I don't know. Wish you can.
And then, of course, you have the enhanced upgrades, the ones that have been upgraded to HD or 4K or whatever. But it's the same game. They didn't actually change anything in the game. They just, made it look better.
Yeah.
Of course, you have evergreen titles, stuff like Minecraft or Tetris, that will just continue to get re-released on every possible platform.
The kind
they
of games
can be released on.
that people are like, I need this on every platform anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Then you have stuff that makes no sense to anyone ever, like, why is Night Trap on the Switch, Justin?
Because Saturn... didn't anyone explain to you that actually it's a really good game?
It's not.
Didn't you know?
It's I've seen it. I've played it. It's
I
not.
would put Night Trap up there with cash grabs. It's just a nostalgia cash grab. It's them saying, "Hey, people remember this. It was a big deal. It was in the big video game violence court cases.
Right.
It was brought up there. People know about it. They'll buy it on Switch as a novelty."
But there are others that arbitrarily seem to make a jump to the next console or even one beyond that for no reason that anyone can ascertain.
Yeah.
It just happens sometimes. Then, of course, you have homebrew betas, unreleased titles, games that were not officially released, but the fan community found a way to move them there, or maybe a company tried to move them and then gave up and we find the beta later. And that can sometimes be really neat from a historical perspective or from a preservation perspective or just from a homebrew and tinkering perspective. Yeah. But I don't know how much it falls into what we're talking about today.
I also feel like there's this category of like something to prove ports that are out to prove that, oh, this system can run that.
Yeah.
Oh, it can.
We can totally run Street Fighter Alpha on the Game Boy Color.
Or Street Fighter 4 on the Nintendo 3DS.
On the 3DS, yeah.
Right. Or like Call of Duty Black Ops on the Wii U, you know, just stuff where they're like, hey, oh, no, it can run that. It's a real game console. It can run this real game that we've ported to it. It looks a lot worse and plays a lot worse, but it can do it. We swear it can can happen.
We added gamepad controls. That's better.
I will say I played Street Fighter 4 on 3DS a fucking ton. Because you could just map special moves to the touchscreen and just touch it.
That doesn't sound broken at all.
Yeah, I had like Hadouken on there and I would just tap that like 700 times and beat the whole game. It was great. The worst part is I'm pretty good at Street Fighter 4. I still played it that way on 3DS. I didn't care.
I have the 3DS port. I think I played it like once or twice and was like, that's neat. And then I put it away and never touched it.
It came with that lenticular cover.
Yes, I still have that.
And I was like, oh, man, look, it's a lenticular. That's how you know it's a quality port. It's a quality port, Saturn. Is that the one that also added like a little gachapon machine in it?
I think so.
Where you could like get little tiny Street Fighter characters, kind of like a Smash Brothers style.
I played so little of the 3DS version that I don't want to say definitively.
Man, I played a bunch of it. I remember being like, man, fighting games on handhelds are great. And then right after that, I kept... You're so shocked. Oh, okay. After that, I got, speaking of kind of weird generational ports, the Vita had a bunch of them.
Oh, yeah.
I got Street Fighter Cross Tekken on Vita. I got Mortal Kombat, it 9?
Vita also kind of came out between the console generations.
It did.
Too, so it was somewhat concurrent with some of those.
But I suppose.
But it did kind of straddle two generations, so it certainly still felt like it.
I had Mortal Kombat 9 on there. I had Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom on there.
I got that on there, yeah.
So it had a bunch of them. A bunch of these weird ports.
Yeah. Which knowing the Vita's capability, it shouldn't have been surprised that it could handle those pretty well. But,
right.
But just seeing them on a handheld was weird.
What the Vita couldn't do was not damage your hands with its extremely
awkward design,
tiny and painful buttons. My God, the buttons on the Vita, it's like smashing your finger into little tiny fucking rocks. It hurts.
Well, so we've covered that you apparently use many, many, many times the amount of pressure of a normal human when you use a controller.
I wanted to know that I mean business. The harder I push the button, the harder my character in the video game will do the thing.
That is how a PlayStation 2 works, correct?
Nintendo taught me this with the GameCube and the triggers. So I have to push it as hard as I can so that it knows I mean business.
Now I wonder if when you play PS2 games, you think some of them are broken just because you're always using the hardest pressure difficulty on the buttons.
I never knew the PS2 was pressure sensitive till like 2 days ago when someone said that. And I was like, oh, cool.
All the face buttons are pressure sensitive.
I mean, I have bigger problems with the PS2 D-pad anyway, which was that it was a blister factory. So
we've covered that the way you use controllers seems inherently damaging on your hand.
Well, the problem with the PS2 is that I have skin on my body, and the PS2 D-pad wants me to not have skin, so it does its best to remove the skin from me.
I played a lot of PS2, and I never had that issue.
Oh, sure, Saturn.
But no, my bigger issue with the Vita was just the grip of it. Like the buttons themselves didn't bother me, but the grip always made my wrists and arms uncomfortable, no matter how I held it.
I was just complaining today that basically every piece of electronics is a flat rectangle.
Right, like the NES controller.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a medium width rectangle. Look, I'm not going to defend the NES controller. It's better than the Master System, but not by a lot.
I like the Dogbone NES controller. I'll still go that way when I can.
Let's talk arcade conversions.
Yeah, so there's a lot. Basically, every arcade game has been converted to something. Done.
Mm-hmm. Great.
That's all of it.
We did it.
No, this is one of those things where you see a lot of examples of this, arcade conversions, because often arcade games will get ported to systems many years after the arcade game, and it will get ported to every possible available console. And because of that, you see games get re-released frequently. Tetris, I mentioned earlier, is on every console. Pac-Man ends up on every console. And these days it's usually just a straight arcade emulation, so there's nothing new or interesting about it. But prior to the late 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, games pretty much had to be ported from scratch to each of these consoles. So you would end up with slightly different versions of these same games on various consoles, and so everything was a little weird and a little different, but you could see just by comparing them what the different consoles were capable of. And it was a great way to see if your new console really was better than your old one.
Which, in this era, I guess we don't think of them like this, but really these are remakes of a sort.
Kind of, yeah.
In that they had to remake them?
Essentially, yeah.
But they remade them as same as they possibly could, except Pac-Man.
Yeah, well, ignoring the Atari 2600 version of Pac-Man, there was still a lot of ports of Pac-Man that tried to be faithful.
Yeah, NES one was good, I feel like.
Yeah, even the Atari 800 version was good.
Neo Geo Pocket Color got a weird port of Pac-Man.
Yeah, and Game Boy Color
scrolled. Yeah,
Game Boy Color also had the screen scroll. Miss Pac-Man was on Sega Genesis for some reason.
I mean,
but it was
good,
a good port.
I guess.
Yeah, it was a good port. Frogger ended up on everything.
It felt like for a while there, they thought things like Frogger and Pac-Man and stuff would be these evergreen titles, like we talked about earlier. It turned out
like it for a while.
It turned out to kind of not be the case because the complexity of games jumped up so dramatically, so fast after kind of the market reboot in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
That it turned, but for a while there, it seemed like companies was like, people know Centipede, put fucking Centipede on stuff. Right. I don't know.
Until about the mid '90s, it felt like they thought they could just keep doing that forever. Just a new console release, Miss Pac-Man again.
Yeah.
But then they realized people don't want to pay full price or even approach full price for such a simplistic game.
Right.
You gotta make a bundle if you want to resell it.
And then you get your
again.
compilations.
Yeah. But even on those early ones, Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr., Coleco had ported them to everything before the NES came out over here.
Yeah.
And so you see these weird pre-NES ports of Donkey Kong and then the NES port of Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And it's just such a night and day difference. But we could talk about those early arcade games forever.
I tell you which version of Millipede I played the most of.
NES?
No, the early 2000s PC port.
Huh.
It was 3D, came in a jewel case.
That. Yeah, Hasbro put it out.
I had like 3 or 4 of that line of old shitty arcade.
Those weird Atari reboots that Hasbro put out. I've got the Missile Command and the Tempest and Kombat. Those are the 3 that I have. From that
I didn't have those. God, I played a shitload of the Millipede. So much. I don't even remember what my other ones were, but I remember I had 2 or 3. Yeah. And I was like, man, old arcade games are great.
You also had the Game Boy Color version of Pong that was part of that series.
I did, which I've struggled to return to. Lots of fighting games have this kind of weird generational overlap thing.
Yeah. Mortal Kombat 3 is a weird one because it launched simultaneously on Super NES, Genesis, and PlayStation 1, which feels weird to think of all those as concurrent. Obviously, they were for a little while there.
Yeah.
And it also led to people wanting to prefer the new console version, but the load time on the PS1 version of Mortal Kombat 3 is so bad.
Yeah.
And I believe, if I remember right, they just straight up disabled the ability for Shang Tsung to do his transformation because the load time was so bad.
Yeah. Well, it kind of seems like, and you saw this a little bit with early arcade games, but you see it kind of more on display with fighting games because they were concurrent. Most of these arcade games were kind of the golden age of arcade gaming, and then the market died, and then we're back. But I mean, granted, there was the Atari in television and Coleco ports of stuff, but they continued after the market restarted itself. But with fighting games, it seemed like because they weren't beholden, they were arcade games. Yeah. They had nothing to do. They weren't tied to a home console.
Right.
So they just tried to be on as many as they really could because, why not?
Maximize that sales.
Yeah.
The weirdest one during that era for me was Mortal Kombat 2 on the Saturn, which came out a year after Mortal Kombat 3 came out on everything else.
Perfect.
And I've never understood it. It was such a late release of MK2. It's a great release, by the way. If you want to play Mortal Kombat 2, the Saturn version is great. I just don't ever understand why it happened. It feels so just out of place.
Yeah.
And then a year after that, they released Street Fighter Alpha 2 on Super NES.
In 1996.
In 96. and then a full year after that, they released Virtua Fighter 2 on the Genesis.
In 1997.
In 97. And it's just such a... Fighting games were so fucking weird with their various ports in that time.
They just seem to eventually filter down onto literally anything that could run them.
Right.
and they didn't care about, and so you do see fighting games straddling that weird generational line. It seems more often than other genres.
Yeah, and also because, especially during that era, the demand for them was so high that they could get away with it. Mortal Kombat 2 on Saturn still sold really well.
Yeah.
So, they weren't going to not do it.
Right. And even like later fighting games, I'm thinking about like Street Fighter 3. Mm-hmm. Like it had multiple different console releases, did it not? I mean, you've
Dreamcast, PS2, and I want to say it ended up on Xbox Live Arcade or something like that as well.
It did end up. I do have the digital version on something, and I'm pretty sure it's XBLA. It might be PS3
or one or the other.
I don't know. But it continues to get these re-releases. Heck, Street Fighter 4, which we were talking about earlier.
Right.
It came out on 3DS. It came out on mobile.
Yeah. That's right. I remember that.
And it wasn't like a shitty mobile version of the game. It was Street Fighter 4.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they retooled it a bit, but it was the game.
Yeah.
And this was in an era when mobile games were still mostly like shitty tie-ins, Like, you remember the Metal Gear Solid 4 mobile game they came out with?
No.
To think, oh man. It sucked. I'm trying to remember details, but Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, and then they came out with the mobile game, and it was like old Snake like hiding behind a cement barricade, and people just firing rockets at him. Is all I remember.
Wow.
And you had to like tap the rockets or something. It was just so stupid. I can't even fucking remember.
Post smartphones?
Yeah. Yeah. It was like a weird. It felt late.
Bizarre.
Although wasn't MGS4 was pretty late.
Yeah, as far as
general.
Well, no, it was a fairly early game on the PS3.
Was it early? I don't know why I feel like it was so late.
It still had the early PlayStation 3 stripe at the side of the box instead of the top.
Oh yeah, it did. I don't know why in my head I feel like it was a later PS3 game. Yeah. I guess I just didn't get it till later. But still, there was like a mobile. I swear there was I got to Google it now, and I
believe you.
Metal Gear Gear Solid 4 mobile. I know there was one. It was Metal Gear Solid Mobile. It came out 2008.
That
what is
could have
this?
been iPhone. That was.
Never mind. It's Metal Gear Solid 2.
Oh yeah. That happened.
Yeah, this was the Engage one.
Oh no. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's very different.
I swear, someone's gonna remember it. Old Snake was in a goddamn mobile game. I remember it.
That's weird.
I'm probably just making stuff up now. Let's continue with the show.
Just moving on quickly. HD remasters. There's way too many for us to go through all that nonsense. But for the last 15 years at least, it feels like everything gets an HD remaster onto the next console every single time, even if the previous console was already HD.
Yeah.
They just feel the need to squeeze it out. This time it's HDer than it was last time.
I do love the remasters we're getting now of games that were already in HD.
Yeah.
And they're like, it's remastered, and I'm like, how?
Well, now it's no longer capped to 18 FPS.
Now it's 8K.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Of course, sports games straddle generations all the time.
True.
Pretty much every generation has had sports games that straddle it. A couple that I did want to mention, FIFA 14 and PES 14 were both on the PlayStation 2 in 2014.
Yeah.
Madden 05 and FIFA 05 were both on the PlayStation 1 in 2005. Madden 98 and NBA Live 98 were on the Super Nintendo in 98, the year that Final Fantasy 8 came out. So, it was there's a lot of generational overlap when you get to
the sports games are pretty famous for it.
Right.
Like fighting games, they everyone plays them and they're on every
scattershot to as much of an audience as you can get.
Right.
And somebody had mentioned to me in the Discord all the 8-bit microcomputer ports to and from the NES, and there are a lot of them. And like you mentioned, the C64 does feel like a different generation than the NES does.
Right.
So you end up with games like Castlevania and Skate or Die and that first Ninja Turtles game, Maniac Mansion California game, stuff like that. That's
Metal Gear Solid Touch. It's called Metal Gear Solid Touch. Sorry.
It was going to be killing
like
you all day, wasn't it?
I felt like I was going fucking insane. I'm sorry. Please continue. NES to microcomputer ports.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of them, and they feel weird going back to them because the microcomputer consoles only had one-button controllers at the time.
Yeah.
So playing NES games on them was always weird because you lost a button, and also microcomputer games to the NES gained a button, so often one of your buttons was useless.
Also, usually, and I know this is probably a technological limitation, but scrolling was generally totally screwed up.
Yeah, in a lot of them.
In NES to microcomputer ports because of the way the NES was able to handle scrolling.
Right. It had native scrolling support, whereas the others kind of had to fudge it.
Yeah, which does not feel revolutionary to us today. But man, when you go back to old microcomputer games and you're like, why is this so choppy? That's why it feels so choppy. It's because the NES scrolled. It had that, what is it, a parallax scrolling.
The NES did not have great parallax.
But it had it.
It's technically capable of it, but you had to cheat the system to make it happen. It had scrolling. The Genesis was where they really started hyping up parallax.
Yeah, Genesis had it in I remember seeing it in Sonic 2 and being like, oh my God, look at it. Look at it scroll.
The background's doing something different than the foreground. Then, of course, you got all the 8-bit games that made their way to 16-bit systems. Specifically, the PC Engine has a ton of just straight-up ports from NES or Master System.
It has a bad version of Ninja Gaiden, a bad version of River City Ransom, and a pretty good version of Fantasy Zone.
Good version of Fantasy Zone. You got a bunch of Wonder Boy games got ported to PC Engine, almost all of them, in one way or another, usually years after the Master System version. Mm-hmm. A lot of Hudson's first-party titles got kind of more of a sequel than a port, but they kept the same name as the NES version, like Bomberman and Adventure Island. Mm-hmm. And you got all of the Super NES RPGs that inexplicably made their way to the PlayStation for just the reason of wanting to sell them again. You got Final Fantasy 4 through 6, Chrono Trigger, Ogre Battle, Tactics Ogre, stuff like that, which were really cheap ports, honestly. They added nothing.
I feel like the most of these ports, I feel, are more well remembered than they should be. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of Americans and a lot of Western audiences didn't get introduced to RPGs, specifically JRPGs, until Final Fantasy VII. And then they were like, oh, what other of this genre is there? And then they looked at the PlayStation, and so then they had all these Super Nintendo ports to their PlayStation. So I feel like they got remembered a lot more fondly than they probably deserved playing them today.
I shit on them at the time because I had played most of these prior, or at least on an emulator. And was really disappointed with the PlayStation ports because of the terrible load time and because of the awkward emulation. It's not great. You're much better off just playing the Super NES versions. I've heard that they were released just because of how easy it was to port Super NES games to PlayStation because of similar architecture, and that makes sense. But that doesn't mean it needed to happen. Yeah, because they're not great.
It feels like one of those things where it's like, well, it's better than not having it, which is really kind of the thesis of this episode of, well, it's better than not having it. Like, would you rather not have it? And it's like, well, I'd rather it be good.
And one example of this that someone pointed out that is oddly a category of itself is the Zelda games that Nintendo delayed until the point where they might as well also release them on the new platform in addition to the old platform.
Which they've now done twice majorly with, you've got Twilight Princess, which came out on the GameCube and the Wii version. And then you have Breath of the Wild, which people forget came out on Wii U. Yeah. Which just saying that feels like ancient to just say those words. But Twilight Princess was a big one because I believe they mirrored it.
Yes.
The Wii version was because Link's left-handed, right?
Right. So in order to make him right-handed on the Wii, rather than just changing his character model, they mirrored the entire game world. So
I feel bad that our producer guy is in here tonight because he's left-handed, and I constantly inform him of that. And I feel like he was...
In case he forgot?
He was probably so upset that he was like, all right, a motion-controlled left-handed sword game. And then they're like, nah, they flopped it.
Yeah.
They flopped it. In the GameCube version of Twilight Princess, I don't know if it's still the case, but for a while there, it was the sought after version because people didn't love the Wii or the motion controls.
Now I believe the Wii U version is the preferred, but
I guess that's true. The HD remaster, I forget about that, which is yet another port of that strangely released game.
Yeah.
Twilight Princess was weird when it came out. It was just weird. It was tonally weird. It was weird that it came out on the Wii and the GameCube, if not concurrently, then right after one another.
Yeah, I believe over here anyway, the GameCube version came out a month after the Wii version.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the case in all regions of the world, but at least in North America, it was a little after.
And so it's this tonally weird thing. It released 2 games at the same time, and they're the same game, but one's like mirrored. It's just the whole thing was weird. And even at the time, everybody was like, we don't really know what to make of Twilight Princess.
Right. Well, I remember a lot of the fans were just desperate for it because they felt that Wind Waker was a kiddie game and they wanted an adult Zelda game, and I guess they got it.
Yeah, the opinion on Wind Waker at the time was very low. Now, granted, Wind Waker had dramatic pacing issues.
That's true.
And for all the faults that a lot of Zelda games have, until Skyward Sword, pacing was usually not a very big problem.
Right.
In the Zelda franchise, it's always been one of those games that usually, it might have problems, whichever game you're playing, but it moves on at a decent clip. And Wind Waker was very much like meandering.
It's true. I had to force myself to push through big chunks of it.
And thankfully, the Wii U version of that game basically fixes all of that, which is nice. But yeah, Twilight Princess was a big one and a weird one. And I guess, and you put it on here, it's not necessarily retro, but basically the entire Wii U library was
just
ported
about
to the Switch.
Just about every first-party Wii U game also is on the Switch, so it's
which I suppose
an example
is
of this. Yeah.
A category in the beginning of the episode that we didn't really mention, which is re-releasing a game because your previous hardware totally failed, and you want to get. I guess it's the same as re-releasing a game that had low sales, but this time it's low sales because your hardware
hardware flopped.
Was a flop. Yeah.
Why weren't there any Gamecom to other console ports because of that reason?
Oh, they ported all the good games.
There were good games?
No, but they ported all of them. All 0 of them.
Yeah.
0%. Let's talk PlayStation 1 and N64 to Dreamcast ports, because the Dreamcast, not necessarily in the time, but not long after the Dreamcast, was kind of considered a 1.5 hardware generation. Like at the time, everybody was like, oh man, Dreamcast is amazing. And then like we talked about in our 1999 episode, suddenly it was like, oh, well, maybe this other stuff is a lot more amazing.
Right.
And it felt like this weird in-between between PS1 and N64 and PS2 and Xbox and GameCube.
And because of that, you saw a lot of games that were released, if not concurrently with the PS1 and N64 versions, shortly thereafter.
Right.
And they were just slightly improved or not at all improved versions of the exact same games you could have gotten on your old system, but now you have a Dreamcast.
Yes. You've got Gauntlet Legends, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver, Tony Hawk 1 and 2, which I want to say Tony Hawk added something.
I don't know. But
it wasn't anything major. Dino Crisis, Resident Evil 2 and 3, Rayman 2, and of course, Vigilante 8 Second Offense, ported directly to the Dreamcast from the N64 and the PlayStation.
The ports of Resident Evil 2 and 3 add VMU support, so you can see your health on your VMU at any time.
And
that's
was
honestly
it problematic seeing it on the screen?
Honestly, it was the best feature of any Dreamcast game I played. Because one thing about the early Resident Evil games that people that have only played the new games might not realize is you had no way to know how hurt you were. Like your character would start to limp eventually. Yeah. But you might not notice it if you're in the middle of getting attacked or you're in the middle of fighting something. But on the VMU screen was your health at all times. So you could just glance down. And I think it also showed your current ammo, so you didn't have to count bullets. You could just glance down and see without going into the pause screen. Yeah. So it was very useful on those games.
And then we kind of have a little more modern of a situation with the PS3 to PS4 kind of feels the same as like the Wii U to the Switch feels.
Yeah.
Which is that maybe, no, the PS3 certainly wasn't a failure. We all thought it was going to be. But it ended up, righting that ship. Right. But at the same time,
the system, the PS4 was already out, and the PS3 had such strong sales in Japan that they kept releasing games on it. Yeah. But over in the rest of the world, the PS4 sold so well that they couldn't sell PS3 games anymore. Yeah. So you ended up with this really weird overlap there.
Yeah, and the PS4 has sold just tremendously. I've not looked up the numbers, but I can't imagine that it sold less than the PS3.
It's approaching PS2 numbers last I heard.
So yeah, you have a lot of late PS3 games that reported the PS4. You got Persona 5, Yakuza Kiwami, Yakuza 0, Dragon Quest Builders, Dragon Quest Heroes 1 and 2, all really kind of known better probably as
PS4 games.
As PS4 games,
especially in the West, anyway.
So it was the case with the PS3 to PS4 that you saw lots and lots and lots of these weird kind of, it's on that system, but here it is again. I guess stuff like Persona 5, I believe there was a regular PS4 version, wasn't there? I was going to say at least it was the Royal Edition.
No, it was.
But it wasn't. It was just straight Persona 5 again.
Right. It was simultaneous between the two systems.
Oh my God, it was, wasn't it? I totally forgot that.
Yeah. And they just happened to release it on both systems instead of just one of them this time. And then they because of that, they didn't take advantage of the PS4 hardware really well. Yeah. Until the Royal re-release. And the same could be said of Yakuza Kiwami and Zero and the first Dragon Quest Builders. They did not really take advantage of PS4 hardware at all because they were also on PS3.
Yeah. And then we just kind of have a list of just miscellaneous titles. You like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters?
Yeah.
Which this one was definitely, I don't know how much of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters games you've played.
As little as possible.
But I've played all of them.
Oh.
A lot. And the NES game is not the same game as the Genesis and Super Nintendo game.
I did hear
whatsoever.
About that. Yeah.
Totally different.
But it was on there. It was
entirely different.
And you see that on some of these others as well, like Bonk released on NES 5 years after the TurboGrafx version.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. Bonk released on the NES, an 8-bit system, 5 years after the TurboGrafx version, which is a 16-bit system.
Yep.
And it was changed. It was changed quite a bit from the 16-bit original that it was ported down from.
Oh my God, how could I forget about Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire, the game that will never die? No one has played it, but it is on everything. It was on PS1 in 1996, a year after the SNES, Saturn, 32X, and 3DO versions.
Yeah.
This game has been re-released on every fucking virtual console, digital service, PSN, fucking all of it has Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire.
Just, it won't die. It's the game that won't die.
I remember it coming to Virtual Console, and I was excited because I was into Romance 10.
Oh, okay.
On PS2. I was really into that one.
Right.
And I still love the other series. I haven't played a Romance in a long time. Nobunaga's Ambition. I have was it Sphere of Influence?
Yeah, that's the one I have on PS4.
I played a bunch of that one on PS4. Great games. But the older ones, for people that haven't played an older Romance of the Three Kingdoms, I've played the original NES one and Game Boy ones. I've had both of those. It's dated. It's like Excel.
I played so much Genghis Khan on.
I thought you were going to say Excel.
I played so much Excel on Windows 2. Actually, I did. I played around with Excel on Windows 2 a lot. Anyway, no, Genghis Khan on NES I played a ton of. And I assumed that meant that I would also enjoy Nobunaga and Romance on NES. But then I didn't buy them on NES until the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it had just been... It was way too late by that point for me to go back.
This is a franchise that has grown so exponentially that going back to the older ones it's just playing a spreadsheet. It's very difficult. Now, old school hardcore strategy fans, they like spreadsheets. They're used to it. Yeah. But for us mere mortals, it's a difficult sell. And Romance 4, oh man, Wall of Fire. Let me tell you, it's on Virtual Console, it's on Wii U Virtual Console, it's on the PlayStation, it's a classic, it's on the 3DO.
I'm surprised it wasn't on the Super NES Classic.
It's the ultimate generational. I should put it on mine just so I have to fucking look at it all the time. just so every time I boot it up, I can shout, Romance 3 Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire. Yeah, it's just, SimCity 2000 is another good one.
Yeah, it's on PS1 a year after the Super NES version, which came out 3 years after the PC version.
Yes,
that was weird.
The educational Mario games, Mario's Missing, was on everything.
Well, it was on every Nintendo thing.
Everything. It's everything in my house. It felt like it was on everything.
Yeah, it was on NES, Super NES, and PC. And the PC version looks so fucking weird. I've not seen that. It was DOS, right? Yeah, it was a DOS game, and it's so weird seeing Nintendo-ish sprites, but with a DOS color palette. It's just really strange. A couple that I always thought were weird. Mega Man X3 came out on PS1 a year after the Super Nintendo version. So this was in 97. This is the same year Final Fantasy VII came out. We get Mega Man X3 on PlayStation.
That's bizarre.
Right, because that's not a game you think of as part of the PlayStation era.
No, and I mean, really, a lot of Mega Man games had weird PS1 ports.
Right.
Also, because you got Mega Man 1 and 2 on PS1, didn't you?
Mega Man 1 through 6 all came out on PS1. God.
And weren't they all individual releases?
Yes, but Japan only.
Right, but still, all 6 NES ROMs. Why they could fit every NES ROM on one disc, but here you go, 6 Mega Man games on 6 different discs.
They did have really neat new features. Like you'd have a little floating hard hat that would like point in the right direction when there was a hidden wall or something. It was adorable. I loved it. And then you had Earthworm Jim came out on Saturn a year after the 16-bit versions for some fucking reason.
I don't know why. Now we're just listing things, but we have to talk about Skyrim. Because Skyrim has dethroned Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire as the game that will not die.
Yeah, because they just announced it again, didn't they?
Yeah, it's the new anniversary edition coming later this year, and they're adding fishing, so they're just improving the game.
Also, GTA 5 is right there with Skyrim as far as games that keep getting re-released over and over.
Yeah, I mean, really, I feel like, GTA 5 is it's just at this point we're kind of reaching this level of like games as a service thing where we're just going to see this worse than it's ever been. Where now games are treated as their own platforms that exist on other platforms, which means you have to extend them to all platforms with things like we were talking about earlier, like with Minecraft, where it's like, I don't know if people know this about Minecraft, but there is an entire sub-industry of people that make games, whole game studios with employees that make games inside of Minecraft.
Yeah. And it's even more sophisticated in Roblox, which I know nothing about.
Yeah,
but apparently it can make some incredible looking games.
They are their own like sub industries within these individual software titles that have basically created their own platform inside of it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like there's so many layers. But I feel like Skyrim is fun just because since there is no online component, it's because GTA 5 feels like a cop out just because it's like, well, there's GTA Online, which really they're not selling you GTA 5 Saturn.
It just happens to come along with GTA Online.
The campaign is just in there. What they want you to play is GTA Online.
That's fair.
But with Skyrim, it really is, it's just Skyrim. There's no online component. There's no game as a service. Todd Howard's just like, here, do you have it yet? Here it is again. And you're like, okay, Todd, why? Why do you want me to buy it again? We added fishing. Okay, I will. Fine. I guess I'll buy it again.
One that I did have to mention, though, just because of how ridiculous it is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And the reason I bring this up is because it was released on Windows PC, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance. That means that it got a simultaneous 8-bit 32-bit, and PS2 release all at the same time.
Yeah,
that's just
crazy.
Weird. That's bizarre.
You do have Just Dance on this list, and Just Dance is like sports games.
Yeah.
It comes out on every platform at the same time.
But in 2020, it came out on the Wii, and that's worth note.
Yeah, Wii was a little dated in 2020. That was last year, folks.
That was last year.
It came out on
For people listening to
Wii.
this 5 years in the future, we already thought the Wii was dated in 2021.
Yeah, let me tell you. I guess let's take it home. Why?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've kind of been making fun of this.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's just a weird thing that often gives us weird versions of games on weird platforms for money reasons, we assume, but we don't
often money
actually
reasons.
know.
Yeah.
But it's just more games, and more games is always a good thing.
Yeah. And sometimes it's weird ports of games, and I love weird ports of games.
Yeah. So at the same time, I think a lot of the ports feel half-assed. A lot of times they're inferior versions, like we were talking about with the Super Nintendo ports to PS1 that add load times and basically no other content. Yeah,
which is basically all the fighting games that move from Super NES to PS1 and also Mega Man X3.
So it's not I feel like it can be kind of tricky sometimes because you automatically assume that a later port of a game that's straddling this generational line is going to be better, but it's not necessarily the case, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's.
As far as final thoughts, go buy Romance of the Three Kingdoms 4 Wall of Fire. It might be Wall of Flame. I don't know.
It's
buy
Wall of Fire.
There's a Wall of Fire in the game. I presume. That you must continue.
You never got past the opening spreadsheet to find out.
I never bought it.
I have it on Wii.
I just remember it like I saw it on Wii, and every time I'd go browse the Wii shop, it'd be there. And then it was on PSN every time I browsed PSN. Then I was on my 3DS one day, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, it wouldn't go away.
Yeah, I have it on Wii, and I might have even paid the $1 to upgrade it to the Wii U version. I don't remember.
Have you ever played it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. I
haven't played the 3DO version.
It's funny the looking back when you talk to people and you're like, oh yeah, I loved that game on blank platform, and people will be like, you played it on what?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Is that not the one everyone else played it on? And then you find out that you were playing some weird fucking port of your thing.
Like, I've got a friend who still insists that Rock Band was almost exclusively a PS2 game and no one played any of the other versions. I'm like, that's not how the rest of us saw that.
Yeah, that's not how that worked out for the rest of us. So yeah, I don't know. A weird episode because there's no real major conclusion other than it's weird.
Yeah.
But Saturn, do you know what's not weird? Is supporting the show on Patreon at patreon.com/retrowarriors. Where you can get awesome things like uncut versions of the show and Talking Wizards, which is just great. Where the most recent episode is Andrew and I postulating about the existence of aliens for about 40 minutes, and then we make up a character named Jelly Bones. So
what was your conclusion? How is aliens?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
No.
That's a good conclusion.
And if you'd like to rate and review the show, you can, and we would like that. Thank you muchly for doing that. This show is brought to you by the following patrons, starting with Jordan Eash.
And Nicholas Perfect.
James Myers.
A Winner Is Me.
Zero Skull Fernando Benavides.
Space Bruce.
Jacob Zagella.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
And then it stops.
That's
the longest character limit. It's just Craig C.
And Brian Guido Hassan
are all the wonderful patrons that brought you this episode including the one massive fan of Greatest American Hero. Thank you.
And we thank you for putting most of those lyrics in. That helps. I'm sorry that it cut off on you, though.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
That's all you can do.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And, we hope you liked it.
Yeah.
A lot.
And I hope that you all don't start putting song lyrics in, because we can't make
Saturn,
that.
don't ask them not to do it, because then they're just going to do it.
Shit.
You're supposed to never acknowledge it.
Pablo, cut that shit.
And just move on. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week. And as always, let us cling together.